Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing one of my favorite videos I do every month. It's my collaboration discussion with Greg for Midlife Cards. So we're going to talk today a little bit about PSA SGC, and we're going to talk about oddball cards. We think that this is, obviously something big in the hobby, and when people start maxing out all of their kind of core sets, where are they going to go from there? So we're going to talk about that a little bit, but just in general, we're going to have a fun conversation. So without further ado, let me bring in our awesome guest,
What's going on, man?
Greg. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Great.
I'm legitimately excited to hang out.
Me too.
Every month, this is a lot of fun. So, what can I say?
Yeah, I'm with you. This is a good time.
It's one of these things, and we text, but we don't talk unless we do this.
Right.
So it's like there's only so much you can get across texting. So
Right.
this is fun because we actually get to hang out.
100% agree. 100% agree. And this time it's great because it's recording correctly.
Yes, we did have a recording issue one month, but it all worked out.
Yeah. Right on. So I guess to kick it off, let's talk a little bit about PSA SGC. I know that everybody's doing videos about it. Everybody kind of has their opinion on it. What do you think?
Well, I think you could make a really strong argument that this is going to really hurt SGC, and I think you can make the argument that it's going to really help SGC. And I've kind of gone back and forth with it. At first it was like, well, if PSA owns SGC, then that means an SGC holder is essentially a PSA holder, right? If
Mm,
it's the same thing. Now, obviously, it's not PSA that owns SGC. We know it's collectors, collectors universe historically, and so that was at first it was like this should maybe help them, but then it was like, well, if you're a collector of SGC stuff, because there's a lot of people that are just SGC. I mean, Sammy Thunder, who I love, he will cross over PSA slabs into SGC slabs so they all match. So
hmm
then it's like, well, if SGC ends up going away, then that means that SGC slabs would go away, and if that happens, then how would people get their stuff to match? And then somebody said something the other day on I was listening to somebody on the way to work, and they were like, "No, this is the best thing that ever happened to SGC because PSA was always trying to position themselves as the only premium authority of card grading. Everybody else was second class. And so if collectors buys SGC, they're literally putting their stamp of approval of we believe in the company, we believe in their grades, we think they do a great job. Because otherwise you wouldn't buy a company that you thought was garbage. So
Fair.
then I was like, well, maybe it fully legitimizes SGC. A lot of people always thought they were legitimate, but some people didn't.
hmm
Maybe it fully legitimizes them. So what do I think's going to happen? I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. But my tentative prediction as of middle March 2024 is I think I think that there are going to be eventually there will be SGC slabs and PSA slabs that are the same, but the tag is different. So I think you'll be able to cross over from an old SGC holder to a new SGC holder that looks like the PSA's current holder, but instead of it being red and white for the tag, it'll be black and white. And it'll look just like PSA's, but instead of it saying PSA in the lighthouse, it'll say SGC. The only thing I wonder, and I'm not sure on yet, is I think that the compromise will, and this is I'm just guessing. I don't know anything. So people look back at this in 3 years and go, that guy was a crazy person. But the frosted, how PSA has the frosted around the card.
hmm Yep.
Maybe the frosted will be frosted black instead of frosted clear
Okay.
and the SGC ones. So you can still kind of have that tuxedo look. But I think they want to find a way to have uniformity between the PSA holder and SGC holder.
Mhm.
And so that's the way that they'll find the uniformity is it'll fit like PSA, it'll look like the PSA, but it'll be distinctly different than PSA with the tag being different. And if you want to cross over from the old SGC to the new SGC holders, I think that's going to be the way they're going to find a middle ground with uniformity. And if that happens, I'm predicting it's because collectors and PSA and SGC watched this video, got my idea, and did it. So they owe me a commission. That's my
There
take.
you go. It's good. It's a
What do you
good
think about
strategy.
that idea?
I think that makes sense. I'm a little my big skepticism of this is who owns the company, right? Nat Turner, he's done multiple startups. He's doing a little bit of private equity. The private equity guys I know very rarely do things for with their company in general that aren't directly related to bottom line. And then I look at some of the investors he brought in when he bought collectors, and there's Steve Cohen, I think, is one of them. He's the guy that owns the Mets. He's like one of the biggest hedge fund guys out there. So my skepticism comes from having, I work in high tech, so I've worked for companies that have acquired company. I've worked for companies that have been acquired, and when I see guys like this acquire them, they very quickly try to figure out, obviously, the most efficient path forward to maximize profit, which I have nothing against. I think that's their business, right? So
Hmm.
totally fine with that. I think that if they think that keeping SGC slabs, regardless of how they're structured, I liked your idea though. I think if they think keeping it will make them more money, that's what they'll do. I think that if they think that you know SGC was starting to potentially encroach on them, and they're looking 10 years down the road, and they said, hey, if SGC keeps growing the way it's growing, they could become a legitimate competitor. Let's buy them now when they're small. I think that I think that is my biggest concern is they've acquired them not so much because they're acquiring them for a technology. I don't know if they acquired them purely for the name, other than potentially to you know reduce competition there a little bit.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I've noticed especially when my last company was a large software company, and they acquired a lot of smaller software companies. And every time we acquire a smaller software company, I was always in a lucky spot to work with the folks of the acquired company. So like their product would now roll up into my product, and that happened 3 or 4 times over like 3 years. Every single time it happened, when I meet these guys for the first time, it's very similar to Steinberg, right? It was, hey, you guys bought us because we're awesome, and nothing's going to change, and don't you worry. And 6 months later, it's like, if you call the product by the other company's name, you know, get your hand smacked, right? This is no, we bought them, we told them that, we love them, but at the end of the day, it's all about the bottom line, and we're going to change what we need to change to move our company forward, right? These guys aren't, especially guys that are in the business these guys are in, they're not buying SGC to help SGC. They're buying SGC because they see a strategic reason
Sure.
why they could benefit from this. So that's where my skepticism is. I hope I'm wrong, but
So not to get into the weeds too much, but let me ask you a couple follow-up questions on that. Was your company that you worked for that was acquiring all these companies, was that a private company or a public company?
it was public.
Okay. Because one of the things that a lot of companies will do is to add to their revenue line is they'll acquire other companies that have some revenue to help, the interest in investment.
Mhm,
And so, a lot of companies have gone from public, take private, restructure, add some things, go back public, and
mhm,
that's how they get super wealthy.
mhm,
So I do think that there's a possibility that part of this is just an acquisition to help the bottom line so
mhm,
that when their revenue is higher, when they take it back public, it is beneficial. And I mean, I don't think anybody discounts the fact that this was just done as a block. It's
mhm,
you're playing you're you're playing tic-tac-toe, and you're not going to the place that's going to help you. You're going to the place to prevent the other person from winning, right?
Right.
So I have no doubt that part of this is a block, if not a last minute, you know, trying to save another deal that's about to happen, or if it's just, I could see it going that way, so let's just do it before they get there.
Right. I mean, we don't know any of this stuff, but I mean, there's always the likelihood of, you know, collectors hears whisperings that Beckett and SGC might merge.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, well, I'm going to solve that problem," right? So we don't know why, but I think at the end of the day, my biggest concern about the longevity of SGC and the quality and customer service of grading at these, at the new, well, still largest, but now even bigger, largest grading company, I don't see that improving by, minimizing competition, unless there was some technology maybe that SGC was working on that we weren't aware of that PSA can now utilize. And if there is, great. But at the end of the day, if you look at the business model, PSA is bigger, and the bigger the company, theoretically, it's the more efficient, right? Because you have more
Hmm.
people doing specific things.
Sure.
You also have higher prices and longer lead times. And let's be honest, the quality of the physical quality of the slab, right, it's not as good as SGC's. So you have a company that clearly probably has a higher margin, right, because it's more efficient, more
Sure.
expensive, and takes more time to do stuff. Acquiring a company that has higher costs. So I have to imagine that one of the first things they're going to do is try to, at a minimum, try to get the efficiencies of SGC aligned with the efficiencies of PSA. And that's where I think collectors will see it, not collectors, the company, but collectors like us will see an impact when they say, okay, look, we're doing the same exact thing as you. Our margins are X, your margins are Y. Get yours up to ours, right? So that's what I'm worried about, is that initial, how do we fund the, or how do we warrant the funding of this acquisition by increasing the margin of the acquired company? And I can't think of a way for them to increase margin other than ways that will negatively impact customer experience.
So, not to belabor the point, but because I find this extremely interesting. I
Mm.
could sit here and talk to you about speculating this and talking about this, and well, what's the strategy? Like, I find it really, really interesting. There are so many other people that go, guys, stop talking about this. Who cares? It doesn't matter. They're all a scam. Just collect raw. Like, there are all these people who have, like, why are you talking about this? Yet I find it really interesting.
Me
So
too.
my question is, what is your response to people that say, why are you spending time talking about this? It doesn't matter. It's all a sham. Like, why does it matter to you because it clearly does. It matters to me, it matters to you. Why does it matter to you? What is your response to those people who have those counter arguments?
So my response A would be, I promise we won't go beyond 15 minutes of this topic. So we got
You
about a
got
minute left.
57 seconds then.
Right. Um, and then the reason I care about it is all of my all of my most valuable cards are slabbed. So, and I don't think I have any of my top 50 most valuable cards slabbed in anything but SGC or PSA. So my fear would be that over time, after this acquisition, there's some sort of like, you know, delegitimizing of SGC slabbed cards. And that would make me concerned, not because I have any interest in selling them, but I don't want to go the way of like GAI, where, 10 years from now, I have to risk, damaging all of these cards to get them put into a slab of a company that is deemed like useful, right? Because there are cards there are old companies that slab stuff where people are like, they show the card and nobody even looks at the card. Their immediate response is, "Who the hell is that grading company?" Right? Like
Right.
that's my fear. I don't think it's going to happen because it was PSA, it was collectors that bought them, but I just don't want to have a situation where it's like, hey, all the PSA or sorry, all the SGC cards you have, or people look at them and are like, what is that? I've never heard of that, right? Like 10 years from now.
So to all the people out there, and we're going to go over, we've already gone over 15 minutes talking about this, but at this point, I
Sorry.
don't care because I have to respond to what you just said. To all the people out there saying right now or thinking, give me a break. SGC's been around since the 90s. That's not going to happen. This is different. These other small companies were only around for, a handful of years and were never as widespread. My response is, well, Beckett was number one. Beckett was the most well respected. There was a premium for Beckett slabs for a long time. And tell me right now, how does a BVG slab sell compared to a PSA or an SGC slab? The company that was number one, without a doubt, they were number one. It wasn't for a super long time, but it was for a while. They are now selling at a severe, underprice under SGC and PSA. So could it happen? It absolutely could happen. Beckett has name recognition like no company in the hobby other than probably Topps.
Yeah.
And their slabs sell for significantly less. People are literally cracking cards out and resubmitting them to other companies because the BVG holder does not hold the same weight. So is it possible that number one or even number two could have a drop in value? Yes. Now, I'm sure that people are going to light me up in the comments for that, but it's true.
Yeah, I think
it's true. It could happen. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Just being a big player at a certain time doesn't mean anything. Remember when Hewlett Packard acquired Compaq? Compaq was the largest PC company in the world. Like home PCs, everybody had Compaqs. That was
ready for it. America Online had like 90% market share.
Perfect.
They had like 90% market share.
Yeah.
What is their market share right now? So could exactly. So the by far number one company, anything could happen with a couple of bad decisions or some bad news or not keeping up with where things are going. So anything could happen. That's why it matters. Okay. 18-minute mark. Slap. Cool. Cut it. Done. Now on to our.
So now we're going to shift to oddball cards. So Greg and I thought this would be an interesting topic to discuss because, like I said in the intro, as people get back into collecting, they're buying cards, not back in. There's a lot of guys that never stop. That's awesome, actually, because those guys have the best collections. They get to a point where they have all the cards that they want from Topps or Bowman or Gaudy or I guess more modern stuff, right? Flea or Donruss, whatever they're looking for. Then where do they go from there? So we thought it'd be an interesting topic to talk about, oddball cards. So by oddball cards, you mean kind of the non-standard sets of cards that, have been coming out since basically the creation of baseball cards.
For sure. And, it's one of these things where some people get offended by using the term oddball. It's like, well, what does oddball mean? Topps is an oddball. Why is we can use whatever term we want. It's just a term that has been used. And so it allows people to kind of know what we're talking about. What I have seen happen is, when I was going to big card shows 30 years ago, a lot of people were set collectors and people would choose a year and they would build the set. And people would go sit at boxes and go through one card at a time. And there are still some set collectors. But even, I had a conversation the other day with Theo and Billy Ballgame. And Billy was like, yeah, I'm a 1960s set builder. He goes, but it's tough sometimes to spend like hundreds of dollars on guys I've never heard of.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people just kind of got out of set collecting because they didn't want to be spending money on all these guys they hadn't heard of. I mean, when I was like 12, 11, 12, 13, I was building the 1979 top set. And that's what happened to me is I'm like, I'm spending all my money on these guys I'd never even heard of. Like,
Right.
this kind of is starting to suck. So what a lot of people started doing is people went away from set collecting and into player runs. And again, it's not that there aren't set collectors, but a lot of people have moved away from that
Mhm.
into player runs. And when you get into a player run, after you've got all the cards, because a lot of guys, maybe they have 15 cards plus some all-star cards.
Mhm.
You're like, well, now what? Now what? And I had a question this week on my Q&A episode, and the person said, "Hey, I've got all the Willie Mays base cards, but I don't have the 51 Bowman or the 52 tops. So now what? What do? I just not buy anything and save up until I can buy those cards, or what do I do next?"
Mhm.
Right? And my response is, well, what about some of the non-wide release cards?
Mhm.
You know, and because they're kind of cool and
Yeah.
they're fairly rare, and some of them are fairly rare. So I think that as people have gone from set builders to player run collectors, it's either you go to the next player, like Theo, our buddy Theo. He's a
Mhm.
Clemente guy. He's got a lot of Clemente stuff. He's starting to do a little bit of Stan Musial because
Yeah.
he's starting to realize, man, the only things that are left are these super expensive, not widely released cards. But if I go to Stan Musial, I can get a cool Stan Musial card for $40.
Exactly. 100% agree with you. And I've had this conversation with some of my buddies that collect that don't do YouTube, and they talk about set building. And I said, look, if you want to do set building, that's your thing. Like, everyone should collect the way they want to collect. But then they asked me for my thoughts on set building. I said, look, set building's cool. The reason I don't do set building is I get a lot of enjoyment out of looking at my cards,
Mhm.
and I feel like I'd get less enjoyment if I, went and grabbed one of the, the white boxes and pulled out, some guy from the 83 top set, some common guy. I'd be like, well, cool. Like, to me, that doesn't, I don't enjoy, personally, I wouldn't enjoy that. I'd
Mhm.
rather enjoy having cards of players who I've heard of, whose names I could at least pronounce. Right. So that's why, and that's feedback I give those guys. But again, people could collect however they want. There's a lot of guys that have so many cards that they, the only thing left for them to do is complete sets, right?
Yeah.
So,
My dad was a set builder. I've mentioned this many times.
mm,
He had the 59 and 60 set. His 60 set had, it's still on the registry. It's retired on the registry. It's called the Miller Collection. And I think it has I think that the average grade, it was a little above an 8.0.
nice.
And I mean, it was a really nice 60 set. And so this is a guy who was a set builder, and I've talked to him a lot. Like, why don't you think people build sets? And to him, it's pretty clear. The reason people have gone away from set building is because of the price of grading. Number
Yeah.
one, the price of grading. I mean, when my dad was sending in cards for his 1960 set, it was like $5 or $6 in the
Mhm.
value. So he'd send in 50 commons to, PSA at $5 a piece or whatever, or $6 a piece. It was like 250, $300.
Mhm.
Now it's like $20 a card. And you
Right.
can wait till there's a deal and it's like 16 or something. But then on top of that, it certainly feels like if you look at cards that were graded several generations ago to now, it seems like they're grading them under more stringent guidelines. Now that's
Mhm.
a whole different can of worms, but
Right.
so you send in the card, you spend $20 to grade a common. That's a $3 card or a $4 card. And then on top of that, it's probably not going to get an 8, at least not compared to the 8s that are already in 8 holders. So
Right.
it's hard to get the high grades,
Mhm.
and it's expensive to submit. So unless you're buying cards that are already slabbed, it's like it's not really sustainable.
I agree. And plus you have the other issue too of commons are getting so expensive and high grades. You say, oh,
Right.
here's 20 commons, 50 commons, and they're like, oh, these three got tens. but because the population on these 310s are like 2, you need to pay us more money because these cards are worth more. And
Yeah.
you're like,
What's
cool.
there's a card in the 86 Fleer set. I want to say it's like Jeff Malone. It's somebody who's like, is a good player, but nothing amazing. And there's just like very few tens.
Right.
So those tens sell for like thousands
Yeah.
because people want to have like a full 10 set. And it's
Yeah.
not a huge set. So that's a set. If you were to build a set, there's not a ton of cards. But if there's only like I don't know the number, but it's not very many tens,
Yeah.
and I'm not even positive if it's Jeff Malone. I'm sure somebody will tell us in the comments, but it's like I couldn't get myself to spend like $2,500 on a Jeff Malone card just
Right.
so I could say the set is complete. I'd
Right.
just stick with the 9 and have all tens and a 9. I guess I
Yeah.
don't know. It's
Yeah.
crazy,
100% agree with you. So because of that,
right?
those options are now to
So
to go
here we
look at
are, 26 minutes in, finally, oddball cards.
oddball cards.
See how long it took us to set the stage for our topic?
I know. Well, we wanted to make sure that we covered every point so that there would be no question of why we're doing this or, our thoughts on the topic. So,
Correct.
oddball cards. Greg and I talked about this before we jumped on. What is an oddball card, right? And there's a lot of different ways to look at it. We view it
Mhm,
as, well, let me rephrase. I view it, Greg, I think agrees, cards from basically non-major sets, right?
mhm.
So, some examples could be like this: a Sonella Margarine Babe Ruth.
Yeah,
Sonella
that's a cool
Margarine is not
card.
a it's not a known set. It's just it's a card of Babe Ruth. If you were to look at it, this is what, 32. You'd say, a non-oddball card from Ruth from this time would be his 33 Goudies, right? But
Yeah.
this would be an oddball. So
What's the pop report on a card like that?
I don't even know. I
Okay.
got I got a great deal on this thing at the show. I bought 2 cards from the dealer, and he gave me a really really great deal on this one. So I didn't even look to see the pop prize. I was like, oh wow, I could get a Babe Ruth card for this amount. Done.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. The other thing too is a lot of oddball cards, depending. I mean, there's a lot that are expensive. There are quite a few oddball cards that are not that expensive compared to the core base cards,
Yeah.
but they're also quite rare.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and then there's the whole separate discussion of, is an oddball card the rookie card if it came out before the rookie card. Like
Yep.
a well-known one is like Bob Cousy, right? I think
Mm,
Bob Cousy's rookie is in the 57 top set. I
mm,
think it 57, 58, something like that. But he has several years prior, he's got a Burke Ross card.
mm.
And so is the Burke Ross card the actual rookie, or is it the tops that came out
Yeah.
several years later?
Yep.
And then that brings up a whole different thing. But if you're a Bob Cousy guy, who Bob Cousy doesn't have a lot of cards because most of his career they weren't making basketball cards, right?
Mhm,
So he only has a few cards. You would certainly want that card.
mhm.
So
Absolutely.
for me, I have one. Well, I mean, I have a Roger Clemens player run. Well, I don't. I he has so many cards. I probably don't, but I've got like 1,000 different Roger Clemens cards, right?
Nice.
But the only notable player run that I have of base stuff is Gale Sayers.
Okay.
Um, and so, I love Gale Sayers. I love the Gale Sayers story, phenomenal talent. Watching the highlights of Gale Sayers, unbelievable. There's a lot to like about Gale Sayers. And so I have every base Gale Sayers card. And then I just stopped. I was just like, okay, well, I've got them all. And then actually a viewer of the show of my channel just emailed me and said, "Hey, I've got something for you. Can I send it to you?" And this is like maybe a year ago.
Mhm.
And so he sent me this 1968 American Oil card,
Oh,
and you
nice.
can see it's in a 2, and I don't know why it's only a 2. I think it's beautiful.
I
It's
agree.
perforated. It's a perforated card. You can see on the back it's got an advertise. something on there. What does
The
it
winner
say? It
circle.
says win Corvettes.
Oh, nice.
But it's like, yeah, and I was like, I was thrilled when they just sent that to me, and I was just like, so now in my Gale Sayers run, I have all my Gale Sayers cards, and then I've got this right with it. And
Right.
it's like now if I see another Gale Sayers card that is not a standard card and I need it, I don't have it, I'll absolutely pick it up because I don't want to stop collecting Gale Sayers just because I have all of his base cards.
Yeah, 100%. Like I have that issue. I'm working on a DiMaggio run,
Hmm.
and I have that issue because
Wait, hold on, pause. Don't just gloss over that. The guy is working on a DiMaggio run. Just
yeah,
no big deal, just a DiMaggio run. Go
yeah,
ahead.
but yeah, and I enjoy it. And one of the reasons I picked
Of
him
course you
was
do.
yeah, one of the reasons I picked him, he doesn't have a lot of playing days cards, so there's fewer cards to have to pick from.
Hmm.
But one of the issues I have with it is he's got his O-Pee-Chee card in 47, or
Hmm.
sorry, 37. He's got a 36 worldwide gum card, and then he's got his Z-Nut minor league cards. And I'm like, okay, well, those are all cool cards, but the Z-Nuts, there's a few that are doable. That worldwide gum card to
Those
me,
are really expensive, though, aren't they? The
yeah,
Z-Net cards.
yeah, they are. They're hard to find too. And then his
Yeah,
worldwide gum card, that to me, my dream card's the M1015 Ruth rookie. That's untouchable forever. And the worldwide gum DiMaggio to me is kind of moving in that direction too. I saw one like a couple weeks ago. It was like a 1 or a 2 for sale for like $40,000. So to me, oddball cards are awesome, but sometimes they're because they are so rare, they're incredibly expensive too, and
yeah.
they're hard to touch.
But a lot of them aren't expensive. So I have a
Agree.
couple more here. And this goes back to the whole what's a rookie card and what it needs to be. Ben Hogan doesn't have a lot of cards. But one card I have of Ben Hogan, which most people would say is Ben Hogan's rookie card. This is a Burke Ross. And again, the Burke Rosses came in pairs. So there is the perforation right here. I got a little bit of a glare there, but you can kind of see the perforation. And as a result, a lot of them were fairly off center. Um, and but if you were to have uh, a Ben Hogan card, this is his first card,
Mhm.
and he doesn't have a lot of cards. So sometimes with some of these guys that don't have a ton of cards, the only way, like you just said with DiMaggio, to get their cards is one of these off the beaten trail cards. I also have a Warren Spahn Burke Ross. I'm a
Oh,
big
nice.
Warren Spahn guy. I was at a card show the other day, and a viewer came up to me, and he was talking to me, and he was like, "Yeah, you're really into Warren Spahn. Why are you into Warren Spahn?" And I was like, "Well, I'm into Warren Spahn for a few reasons. Number one, he's one of the best left-handed pitchers of all time,
Right.
but I have a special place in my heart for the guys that also served in the military.
Mhm.
And so, Feller, Yogi Berra, some of those guys I have a special thing for. So yeah, I have several Warren Spahn. You gave me a really great 52 tops Warren Spahn. And so like, whenever there's a guy that you like, sometimes like in this case, this Burke Ross Warren Spahn, I think I paid like $60 for it, and it's a 51 Burke Ross Warren Spahn and a 4. Sometimes they're more expensive than other cards, like the Jackie Robinson Burke Ross is
Mhm.
super. It's like a couple thousand.
Yeah.
Um, so it kind of just depends on what it is, but
Yeah.
sometimes you can get them for less, and sometimes, like the DiMaggio you just mentioned or that Jackie Robinson, they're a lot more.
Yeah. 100%. Like one of the cards that I picked up last year, I had, I wanted to get a 1909 Honus Wagner. So I had two choices. One, it's a little tough to pick up these
There's about
days.
20 of.
Right. And the other one was this guy and,
Nice.
you know, Dockman and Sons, right?
Yeah.
So obviously a little bit of an oddball card. It's not, the core T206 from 1909, but I was able to pick up a 1909 Honus Wagner for, I don't know, 10,000th of what his other 1909 would go for, right? So so there's a lot of times where you definitely can get where you could get a card, if you want, a rookie card. Obviously, Honus Wagner had some like he had, he had other cards from much more rare sets prior, but they were again other oddball sets. His rookie, if you go to the PSA registry, is his T206 card. But I figured if his rookie card is 1909 T206, and I got another card from 1909 of his, it's sort of his rookie card,
Yeah.
and it's considerably less expensive.
And it's also interesting because, I don't just collect baseball. Obviously, I just showed a football card, a golf card, and a baseball card. And so for some of us that collect a variety beyond just baseball, a lot of the times to get their rookie card,
Oh yeah,
like that Ben Hogan, I have another one here. So this is a Bobby Jones rookie card. Okay. So this is a Bobby Jones rookie card, and it's Lambert and Butler.
yeah,
It's just some English tobacco company. You can see on the back,
yeah.
it says England there, Lambert and Butler, England. And it's like, sometimes for some of us that collect more than just baseball, in order to get their rookie card, to get their first card, you have to veer
Mhm.
out that direction. Um, and I'll go back to Theo because he's one of the people that we're familiar. A lot of us are familiar with who collects a player. He's got there. There's so many different Clemente cards besides just the base cards from the middle '50s to the middle '70s. When he played, you've got all these other
Yeah,
varieties and some of them are awesome looking cards, like
absolutely. He's got
Milton
that.
Bradleys and bazookas, and there's some cool stuff in there.
He has that. Doesn't he have a team issue card that was actually owned by Clemente?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think he
like
has. Yeah,
that
yeah, he
stuff's
does.
super cool.
Yeah. Sometimes it's about the image too, like, the image on some of those non-licensed things or stuff are
Mhm.
really cool pictures.
Yeah, like this one, the reason I bought this card is because of the image. So this is the Don Mattingly. This is 1981 Nashville Sounds. But I look at this and I'm
Well,
like, this card is to me, image
yeah,
wise, awesome in so many ways. You got a
yeah,
super young Don Mattingly. He's got the
yep.
flip up sunglasses on, which is super 80s awesome.
Oh, yeah,
And it's sponsored by Arby's,
yeah. And
which
who
is my
doesn't love
favorite fast food
Arby's?
restaurant. So it's like to me, the card itself, I'm like, I don't need a minor league Don Mattingly card, but I'm like, the look of this card super cool to me, so I had to
I
pick it
I,
up.
uh, I actually did a video about a year ago on minor league cards from the junk wax era.
Oh, nice.
And one of the ones I mean, there's a couple of Jeter ones that are like high school cards that are crazy expensive, but Mattingly has, yeah, there is that one of them.
Yeah, this is
That's pretty
his
cool.
front row '92 high school card.
So there are Mattingly has like 2/3 minor league cards.
Mhm,
I like the image on the one that you're showing. There's the Columbus Clippers one that was ended up being like, super reprinted and stuff.
mhm.
That image isn't really that good. It's kind of a distant dark photo of the Columbus Clipper one. But the one you just showed, yeah, it's a really cool image. And that's the way I think of Mattingly. I mean, Mattingly was a fantastic first baseman defensively,
Mhm.
and I remember him kind of crouched like that, ready with his hands out, like, you know, it's not just his low crouch when he would bat, it's also his low crouch when he was fielding. And that tells that story, that card right there.
Yeah,
So yeah, I totally agree. And I don't know. That's one of the problems I'm having though with like modern cards. Like a lot of vintage guys are starting to do modern cards of vintage players.
yeah,
And that's been a conversation that I've heard more and more people talking about and say, "No, no, you got to get into it. This is great." And there are some cool looking cards. My
yeah, I agree.
problem is the variety of them. There's so many different variations and things that I don't understand them. I don't understand them. I mean, I've even been recently doing a lot of searching for some. I'm like, I want to kind of do a Jeter run,
Mm,
uh, and I started getting into it, and I'm like, I got to go something really simple because I don't understand what these things are. So one
yeah.
of the things I was thinking about doing is like Top started doing the gold every year, and it was out of whatever year it is. So like the
Mhm.
2023s, there's 2023 of them numbered, and I'm like that I can kind of I can kind of understand.
Right.
So I can kind of go through the years and go, well, I don't have the 2009 gold yet out of 2009 of them. Like I can wrap my head around that. Um, but that's one of the things is with some of these oddball. Again, we use oddball, and I know that that grinds a lot of people's
No
gears, but
offense. We don't mean
yeah,
that in a negative way.
we don't mean that in a negative way. But a lot of these not as widely released cards is you see them and you're like, okay, I like it, but it's hard to comp it. It's hard to know what it's worth.
Mhm.
It's hard to know what's happening with that particular card
Yes.
because you don't know what it is. And if you don't know what it is, how are you going to comp it and how are you going to know what to pay for it?
Exactly, and that works in your favor too. And I have an
It
awesome
can work in
example
your
of that.
favor. Hold on, Darren. You're gonna have to. We're gonna have to edit this. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Uh,
I have a knock at the door from my mother. So
okay.
hold on. I can
Okay.
introduce her. We can make it part of the show.
Okay.
That's
Hi.
Mama Midlife right there. Grandma Midlife. Well, no, she'd be Mama Midlife. That's Darren, my
Nice to
buddy
meet
Darren.
you.
We're recording.
Nice to meet you. Sorry to
No,
interrupt.
you're gonna be on YouTube.
The sign wasn't on the door, quiet.
I didn't get the studio light where you hit it and the red light comes on. It says on air.
On air, right?
Sorry.
That's okay. Love you. Well, we could leave that, I guess.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. Guest.
So
You could put guest appearance, special surprise guest
yes.
appearance on the thumbnail.
I
So what were
will.
you going to show me?
So we're talking about when it's hard to comp. So I
Yeah.
went to a local card store, and I'll cover the grade. I bought this card raw. It's the Napoleon Lajoie game card
Yeah.
in red, and they
Now
had
that
it.
one's a so maybe the red's different, but I know that's a somewhat there are a fair amount of those that are out there, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not super rare, but the guy at
Okay.
the card store had one, and I'm like, oh, because most of his stuff was like 80s and newer. And I'm like, can I see the Napoleon Lajoie card? He's like, sure. I was like, I'm curious where you got this, just because you don't usually stock this kind of stuff. And he said, I bought a set of like 80s cards from somebody who was selling their whole set, and he just happened to have this in there, so I'm selling it. And I said, okay, what are you asking for? And he's like, I don't know. Again, it was ungraded, so I was like, I don't know, I'll give you $50 for it. He's like, sure. I was like, huh. I don't even know what this thing is. It's a Napoleon Lajoie card. So then I
Right.
sent it to. So I looked it up. I'm like, oh, it's a Napoleon Lajoie game card. Cool. I sent it to PSA, and it got a 9.
Oh my goodness.
So then I'm
You
like,
sent that to PSA?
I did, yeah.
That's a so you this is a while ago because that's an older slab.
This is an old slab. Yeah, this was back in the day. This was when I
Okay.
first was looking. It was before I really got back into it, right? And I'm like, okay, I got a Lajoie and a 9 for $50, right?
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of the oddball cards is if people are selling
What's it
them, you don't
worth?
know what they are, especially if they're not graded, then you're able to get good deals on it.
What's that card worth?
More than $50. I don't know. I would guess hundreds. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's worth 1,000, but still,
Yeah.
hundreds of dollars for a playing days Lajoie card and the 9 because the guy that sold it was like, I don't know what this is.
It's interesting too, because like, it really is knowledge is power. And
Mhm.
that's why when you have, a guy like, Dave Blue Jacket 66, and he walks into a show. In a lot of cases, he certainly knows more than a lot of the dealers.
Of
So
course.
he can walk up and be like, "Oh, what do you want for that?" And know that it's like worth
Mhm.
way more than what the person, because they don't know really what they've got.
Right.
And so the accumulation of knowledge, and that's one of the reasons I have so much fun watching channels like his or Mangini's, is you learn about some things that you wouldn't have otherwise been familiar with, and now you are equipped with that knowledge, and you go into a show, and if something like that falls in your lap, you are, and that's one of the things that you've talked about, is I know this year you've tried to cut back on the volume of buying, and you've tried to be a lot more specific. And one of the things because when you had mentioned that before to me, and I don't remember if that was on a conversation that we aired or not, but I
Mhm.
was like, well, what do you do? Like, if you're not buying a card right now, like, what do you do with your hobby time? Like, you're not looking to buy. What are you looking to do? And you're like, I'm just researching. I'm
Mhm.
reading about cards. I'm watching videos about cards. I'm learning more to broaden that knowledge base. So then you have a better idea of what you're going to target and how you're going to target it, because you have more knowledge, and clearly, truly, in this community, in this world of cards, knowledge is 100% power.
Mhm. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So, I mean, with that said, let me ask you, since I brought it up, how are you doing? How are you doing with staying more uh, strategic in being more patient in your buying? Are you finding yourself? Are you the guy who goes to the grocery store to get a couple of ribeyes, and you come out with a couple of ribeyes, or do you come out with a couple of ribeyes, some cookies, some soda, and some drinks?
These days, if I went to the store, I'd probably be getting chicken breast because my back surgeon told me I need to lose weight. So I'd be coming out with bottles of water and chicken breast. But,
Oh,
um, but no, I
boo!
would I typically when I do stuff like that, I typically get what I go in. I like to make lists and follow the list. That was my issue with baseball cards. I wasn't making lists. I was just saying
Mm,
all this stuff is cool. So this year, I've been buying one card a month,
hmm
with the exception
Literally,
of
like, you're literally only buying one card a month.
yes.
Because I want now I'm gonna call you out on this,
But
because
yeah, I was gonna say
I just watched a video. No, hold on. I just watched your video about all of your Negro League player pickups and how
I
you're expanding your Negro League player. Hold on, but you don't
yeah,
get to defend yourself quite yet.
okay.
So you just came out with a video with a
Mhm.
bunch of cool early African American players and some of their first and second cards and the history about it. I just watched it. I enjoyed it. And I'm like, the whole time I'm sitting there going, he told me he's not buying anything other than these other big cards. So what's going on?
So I had two exceptions this year. So here's
As
my
he pulls
stack of
over a stack, as he pulls over a stack of cards.
yeah, no. So most of the cards I showed yesterday, I
Mhm.
actually had purchased in like late December.
Okay.
So the two exceptions for the year, and I wasn't going to show it because I wanted to complete the run, and there's one card left. Actually, there's two cards left that I need, and I'm not going to pick them up for a while. So I figured I'd do the video. Those two are the Larry Doby rookie and
Mm,
the Ernie Banks rookie.
mhm.
So I don't have those. So I was waiting to show these until I got those and decided those aren't really on my list for this year. And because of the price point, they'd have to be on my list to buy them. So the
Mhm.
two cards I bought this year that weren't on my list, I did buy the Monty Irvin
Yeah,
in
you
like
did show
early
that one.
January.
It's a
Yeah.
beauty.
And then I bought last month, I bought this Exhibits Joe DiMaggio.
Nice.
Wow, this thing's glaring pretty bad. I bought this Exhibits Joe DiMaggio. And the reason I bought this one because I thought it was super cool. I'm like,
Yeah.
I want that for that run. So I picked it up. And that was early
Yeah.
January. So I hadn't solidified my new strategy at that point. I was testing the
Okay.
waters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Now let me ask you. Let me circle back to something we talked about earlier. As you're searching for a card, so is there is there a card that right now is on you're hunting for, or are you on a break? This when you go to the next one on the list, whatever it is, you don't have to tell us what it is unless you want to. But when you go to the next one on the list, are you specifically looking for a SGC or PSA, or does your search include both? And has since the news of the merger, has that affected your searching at all?
no, it hasn't affected my searching at all. I still look for both. With the cards on my list this year, I'm less concerned about the grade versus the eye appeal
Mm,
because the cards on my list, I can't buy any of them in a high grade. And I know that Mangini made fun of me, but I can't buy any in a collector's grade really either because they're pretty high end. So
mhm,
for me now, I'm looking for the best eye appeal that would fit into my budget, right? So some of these cards I'm looking at are going to be like my searches are for like twos and threes, both
mhm,
SGC and PSA. So I'm less concerned with what case they're in. If I were going after something newer that was at that same price point, I probably would be trying to find them in PSA cases right now.
mhm.
Um, just because I don't know how that's going to play out. But for me, the cards I'm looking at are a little bit more rare. They're a lot pricier at mid-grade price points. So I, for me, it's more just the eye appeal of them. And if I pick one of these up, and let's say in 10 years SGC doesn't exist anymore and it's gone the way of GAI, then I'll have a really nice eye appeal one that I could cross over.
Mhm. Um, and do you think we're headed in, and it's already kind of happened to a certain extent. A lot of threes sell for more than fours, or fours sell for more than fives, and in a lot of cases, that's the experiences that I've seen, that it's been more because we've seen old grade that maybe wasn't really a strong four. It was really more like a 2.5 or a three
Mhm.
in the way they're grading now, and the three sells for more than the four, for example.
Right.
Um, do you think that we're heading in a place where the eye appeal is going to be paramount over the number? Like
Yeah.
is a sharp six going to sell for less than a centered, clean four at some point, or is the number always going to be the biggest factor, you think?
I
And this could be
think
almost a whole show,
right,
that
100%. Yeah, no,
question.
no, I
But
agree.
just your
But
response, what do you think?
for that question, I would say I am definitely seeing it moving in that direction. A lot of the cards that are on my list, especially my goal cards, we talked about the tiers, the top tier,
Yeah.
my first tier goal cards. I'm seeing a lot of those actually go in that direction. My super duper goal card for the year is a 52 tops Jackie Robinson,
Hmm.
and I've seen a lot of them going up for sale. That not, I mean, there's not a ton of up for sale, but the ones that do go up for sale, the pricing is weird. Like you're looking at the price, you sort by price, and you're like, okay, maybe a six, and then like a four, then a two, then a three, then an authentic, then another three, then a four, and I'm like, this is weird. And I look at it, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. 52 tops, a tough set for centering. Here's a three that's perfectly centered, and they're asking what a five would go for, like a normal five. And then the five they
Hmm.
have for sale, that's just slightly more money, is not an off-centered card, but it's slightly more off-centered than that well-centered three that has a little bit softer corners on it, right?
Hmm.
So I'm seeing that with my goal cards. I think that directionally my take, and I don't know, I'm probably wrong. um the real high end cards, I think, will go that direction,
Yeah.
and the lower price cards, I think, will go that direction. But I think a lot of the cards in the middle, I think, will still kind of be priced more or less on grade, unless it's, I mean, and there's some examples where it's like, you look at it and you're like, how did that get that? Like a buddy of mine this morning sent me, he's looking for a Brett rookie, and he sent me a couple shots of some cards he's looking at, and he goes, "How is this a 9?" And I was like, "Because the diamond centering is only a slight diamond center. I don't know, right?" Like,
Yeah.
and they sent me another 9. I'm like, "Yeah, it's chipping on the bottom, so I don't know how a 9's chipping because that the Brett rookie's got the
Yeah.
purple and the
Oh
green."
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, "It's chipping, so I don't know." So there's definitely cards that are, um, you know, I think there's definitely cards that you'll look at and say, no, that even though the grade is this, it's not good. But I think on average, I think for most cards are going to probably stay more priced based on the grade because let's be honest, especially with the newer grades, they are a little bit more accurate with it. Like, yes, you could find, you know, pick a card, right? Like a Ozzie Smith rookie. You could find a 6 that might look as good as a 7, but if you
Yeah.
take like on average a stack of 6s and a stack of 7s, you'd say, and you said, hey, here's 10 6s, 10 7s. They're all mixed up. You can't see the grade. Half are 7s, half are 6s. Put them in the pile. I'd guess you'd probably get 60, 70% of them correct, right?
Yeah.
It's the cards like, you know, a Gaudy Ruth, right?
Yeah.
You look at those on you look at the pricing on eBay and you're like, okay, it's all over the place. Here's an
Yeah.
authentic I mean, a man 52 Toss Mantle, I think, is a really good one, actually. The Ruth is okay. The 52 Toss Mantle is a great one. You'll go through the listings on eBay, for example, because for me, that's obviously that's not the end all be all, obviously, of pricing, but it's easy for me to get a gauge of where it's at because you have typically multiple for sale and similar grades, all just priced in a row. So you can kind of get a gauge for where people at least want to get for these cars or what they expect possibly to get with a little negotiating. Um, so if you look, there's a lot of times you'll see an authentic that's priced like a 5, right? Or you'll
Yeah.
see a really well-centered 3 that's priced like a 5, right?
Yeah.
Like our friend Orlando, his if he were to put that, I would tell my expectation if he were to put that on, I would say ask minimum 150,000 for that thing, right?
At least.
Yeah, because it's an authentic, but it's perfect looking, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a good example, the 50
Yeah.
Toss Mantle of a card that really does have price driven by eye appeal, right?
I think you're explaining why I'm not winning any of the auctions on a lot of the cards that I've been bidding on.
Mhm.
I've bid on a lot of cards over the last month that were kind of bigger cards, and I haven't even been close on any of them. And I'm like, dude, I bid more than one has ever sold for,
Mhm.
like ever. But because they're kind of older, pre-war, and they look really nice, people are more inclined to not pay attention to the grade because of how they look. There's
Yeah.
a car there's a card I'm bidding on tonight. It closes. I don't even want to say what it is yet because I'm going to jinx myself. But I've got my bid, my snipe bid posted already, and it closes in less than 2 hours. And I'm like, I know I'm not going to get it because I'm not going to go way over because it looks to me better than the grade.
Yeah, and that's tough. And one of the things that I've noticed, and maybe it's just my luck, I could be wrong on this. I don't have a ton of experience doing it. I don't have enough data points to say this is something that's, scientifically proven.
Sure.
But what I found is a lot of times when I'm looking at some of these cards and I'm like, it's the grade, it's either it looks really good for the grade, but it's going to sell for a lot, or hey, here's finally a reasonable price on it, but it looks kind of crappy for the grade. I don't want
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
What I've a couple times done is I've waited and gone to shows and I've found the card that's in the reasonable grade at the show, and the guy's asking less than what it was selling for on eBay and was willing to negotiate a little bit. So, and that's the thing. I think I like eBay because I'm incredibly impatient. So if I see
Yeah.
the card I want, I could buy it and I'll have it. Like even auctions on eBay stress me out because that means I have to wait and don't know
Oh
what's
yeah.
going to happen. Right.
The
So
card I'm bidding on tonight is a 10-day auction, and I've been watching it for 10 days, and
yeah,
there's 2 hours left, and I'm just like, come on,
right.
dude.
It drives you nuts. And if you don't win it, it's like, ugh. So,
Oh, I'm not going to win it, but
oh, what's the thing Theo asked me to do? A megabid it.
I don't have the kind of money to do a mega bid.
I've never done one either. I just thought it was interesting that I never even heard of that. But yeah, but no, and that's the thing. Like, I buy most of my cards on eBay because it's like, okay, I see it. It's more or less what I'm looking for. The price is a little high, but if I buy it now, I'll have it these days in 2 weeks because of the, sending it out to get the slab reconfirmed by who the hell knows, right? So, but for me, it's okay. It's okay. I bought it. I know it's coming. I'll get it in a couple weeks. I know what I paid for it. And, I've come to accept that when I don't put the card into my vintage card pricing database until I physically have it.
Mm.
So it gets there and I plug it in. And, a lot of the times, how they have the green, the white and the red price. A lot of the times when I type mine in, I'm like, oh, interesting. Because I wait till I physically have it, which is a couple weeks, which means the database from the eBay purchase is already uploaded. And I'll put it on and be like, huh, wow, I bought this for the same price as the fool that bought the most expensive one.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. That was me. Right. So,
That's
but I'm
awesome.
okay with that sometimes because if I want the card and the price to me, and that's the thing with cards for me, there's cards where I say, I set my own reasonable price. And so I don't care what the card's actually selling for. It's what is it worth to me, right? Like somebody can say, hey, I got a 1952 Topps common high number player in a 10. I want 20 grand for it. It's not worth that to me because I don't want the card, right?
Right.
So for me, I'm willing to pay a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit more than what it's kind of going for, because to me, that's what the card is worth to have it in my collection and be able to look at it every day and enjoy it, right? So
I think you make some great points. We've just crossed
the hour.
our hour threshold.
And I don't know how we got on the topic of this, right? Because weren't we talking about oddball cards?
See, when there are so many rabbit holes, right?
Right.
That as soon as we start talking, we just have a fun time talking. And who knows? We talked about your back surgery and buying chicken breasts. So we covered a lot of stuff. And we had a special puppet guest. So
exactly. So before we drop, I had one more oddball card that I want to show.
Oh.
It's just a funny card. My brother actually got this for me for part of my birthday present. Because he said, I've never seen this card before, but I have to say it is the most generic looking baseball card I've ever seen.
Okay.
Sports card, Nolan Ryan.
Do you remember the show Roseanne?
Uh-huh.
When Dan Connor used to drink beer, it just said beer on it. It wasn't like Budweiser.
Right.
It wasn't like Miller Lite. It just said beer. And I was like, that is the equivalent of Dan Connor drinking a beer that says beer. That says sports card with a picture of Nolan Ryan.
Sport card, Nolan Ryan. Exactly.
That's awesome. Nice. All right. So we always kind of come up with something to talk about, but I did want to throw this out there to everybody. If you're still around after an hour and almost 4 minutes, if there's something you want to hear us talk about in the comments, throw out a topic idea that you'd like to hear us two knuckleheads, kick around for an hour. We're definitely always open to whatever people are interested in talking about. And we're even interested in talking about things that nobody's interested in talking about because we just have a fun time hanging out. 100%. So, I say every month when we do this, if anybody else watches or listens, that's a bonus because I would do this anyway, even if nobody listened, because I have a good time.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you. And if the people watching, if the viewers want to put some topics, maybe what we could do next month is we'll pick one topic and we'll talk about it. And at the end, we'll see how far off topic we've actually gotten in an hour.
I have a feeling it will probably get off topic, but
that's
awesome.
Okay
too. That's okay too. Hey, I don't 100%. Think when a lot of these guys get on sports talk radio, they have a full agenda of everything that they're going to talk about. They just kind of start talking and then see where things go. That makes it more authentic, right?
100%. And that's where we went today, which is good. We had 2 topics and we talked about 7 or 8. So that's good.
So we covered them though.
Yeah,
We
100%.
covered
Now,
them.
imagine if we talked about the PSA SGC thing for an hour, like we'd have no one else watching after. Like we probably lost a lot of our viewers before we got into the good
There's no doubt a lot of people just thumbs down, clicked out as soon as they heard us talking about that. But you know what? I still had a good time, so it's fine.
So what you're saying is I need to put the description of way cool stuff so that they
Oh,
know it's coming.
I mean, yeah, you got to make a thumbnail that's just dynamite marketing on this one because they've got to get through those first 15 minutes before we start talking about the topic at hand.
Perfect.
I have a couple. I do got to throw this out there. I have a couple of people. There's one in particular who, because I'll do a video on I don't know showing off my pickups for the month, and then I start the video and I'm talking about just what's been going on. Maybe somebody sent me something cool. Blah blah blah. And so somebody in the comments always puts video starts at 7 minutes and 32 seconds. And I'm
Nice.
like, that's so dirty. Like, I mean, if okay, fine.
Which is fine. And I could put that in the description. This video starts at 18 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So
Wow.
there you have it.
I'll
Hey,
put chapters. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching.
for sure.
Really appreciate it. Greg, always a pleasure.
It's a blast.
And I'll talk to you guys, talk to everybody soon. Talk to Greg probably sooner.
Yeah, you'll talk to me. At least you'll talk to me in April because we'll do a video in April. But
Yes.
hopefully we'll talk in before that as well.
Absolutely. All
All
right.
right.
Thanks, Greg.
See ya.